Good evening and welcome to the Lincoln City Council meeting of April 24th, 2023. In accordance with LB 898, please be advised that a copy of the Opens Meeting Act is posted at the back of the chamber by the northwest door. Let us all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a brief period of silent meditation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The order of business of the City Council is as follows. The clerk will call the items listed on the agenda. Under public hearing, anyone wishing to speak on an item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The council shall require any member of the public desiring to address the council to identify themselves, the name of their organization or group, including an address that you may be representing by such person or group, unless your address requirement is waived to protect the security of the individual. The applicant may then make one short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating your name, address, organization, or group, and whether you are speaking in favor of or in opposition to an item. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all public hearings, the council will vote on resolutions and items listed under third reading. On the second and last Mondays of the month, immediately prior to adjournment, anyone may speak on any issue not on the agenda for that date, nor planned for a future agenda. This evening is one of those meetings where we have open microphone night. Madam Clerk, will you please call the first item of business?
Our first item of business today for our City Council meeting Monday, April 24th, 2023 is our consent agenda, Sections 1 and Sections 2.
Is there anyone present to speak on any of these items in Section 1 and Section 2? Anyone present? All right. Seeing none, let's move on.
We can now vote on these items. Item 1A is approving the assessment resolution for College View Business Improvement District and assessing the cost against the benefited properties, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Beckius. Further discussion? Seeing none, please call the vote.
Washington,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Suarez,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 1B is approving the assessment resolution for Havelock Business Improvement District and assessing the cost against the benefited properties, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Beckius. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the vote.
Beckius,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Suarez,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 1C is approving the assessment resolution for North 27th Street Business Improvement District and assessing the cost against the benefited properties, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Beckius. Discussion? Seeing none, please call the vote.
Bowers,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Suarez,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 1D is approving the assessment resolution for South Street Business Improvement District and assessing the cost against the benefited properties, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Beckius. Discussion? Seeing none, please call the vote.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Suarez,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 1E is approving the assessment resolution for University Place Business Improvement District and assessing the cost against the benefited properties, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Beckius. Discussion? Seeing none, please call the vote.
Schob,
Yes.
Suarez,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 1F is approving the assessment resolution for West O Street Business Improvement District and assessing the cost against benefited properties, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Beckius. Discussion? Seeing none, please call the vote.
Suarez,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Items 2A through 2C were introduced by Schob.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Washington. Further discussion? Seeing none, please call the vote.
Washington,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Suarez,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. That concludes our consent agenda. We shall now move on to Section 4 of Public Hearing Liquor Resolutions. I'll be calling items 4A and 4B together. Application of PTP Inc., doing business as the Hawks Nest Sports Bar for a Class I liquor license located at 1245 Libra Drive, Suite 110, and the related manager application of Jason J. Moore.
Is there anyone present to testify on these items? Items 4A and 4B? Please come forward. Thank you.
Okay, sir, I'm going to swear you in. Do you solemnly swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you very much, sir.
State your name and address for the record and tell us a little bit about your application.
My name is Jason James Moore. My address is 7936 McBride Avenue here in Lincoln. So a sports bar out on South 17th Street, and we're going to call it the Hawks Nest Sports Bar. And just looking to kind of have a neighborhood sports bar. It's kind of in a little business district there off 14th Street. And I have a son that attends Southwest High School right now, and I have another one that'll be following in a few years after that. So kind of going to make an area for, before and after sporting events, band concerts, choir concerts. That's kind of what we're looking to do in that neighborhood, in that area. And it's a growing neighborhood as well. So a lot of businesses there and place for lunch and meetings and things like that. So that's what we're looking to do.
Great, very good. Thank you. Any questions, comments? We're glad you're here. Thanks very much. Yes, best wishes.
All right, thank you.
We can move on.
Is there anyone else to testify on this item? Okay. I'll be calling item 4C and 4D together. Application of Warhorse Gaming Lincoln LLC, doing business as Warhorse Casino Lincoln for a Class CK liquor license located at 7055 South First Street, and the related manager application of Troy J. Falk. I'll swear you gentlemen in. Do you solemnly, I'm going to swear both of you in. Do you solemnly swear and affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you really believe it to be?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. You can state your names. Yes, thank you.
Hi, my name is Walter Coffey. I'm with Warhorse Gaming. We are at 7055 South First Street, and we are asking for an upgraded liquor license so that we won't have to keep applying for the addendums for the events for the horsemen.
Great.
My name is Troy Falk. I'm the food and beverage manager, and I'm also going to be the manager on site.
Great. We appreciate your being here. Are there any questions for these gentlemen at all? Does looks like that. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Anyone else present to testify on these items 4C and 4D? Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, let's move on, please.
I'll be calling item 4E, manager application of Jennifer L. Miller for Lincoln Children's Zoo, doing business as Lincoln Children's Zoo located at 1222 South 27th Street. I'll also swear you in. Do you solemnly swear and affirm that testimony you're about to give is the truth as you really believe it to be?
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Miller. You want to tell us a little bit about your application?
Yes. So I am the Assistant Director of Guest Experience at the Lincoln Children's Zoo. I'm taking over the liquor license responsibilities for our former Director of Guest Experience who's moved on to other opportunities. So I look forward to responsibly serving and our team and the community through all of our events and rentals and weddings and everything else exciting that we're doing here at the zoo.
It is exciting at the zoo. That's great.
Yes.
Thanks for being here. Any questions? Yes, Councilman Schob.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Miller, thanks for coming forward. Tell me, when will Brews at the Zoo be back?
It's going to be back. We new and improved this year, so we'll be announcing and putting tickets on sale here shortly. In May, I believe.
Okay.
The first tickets will go on sale.
Just a week away.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We got some new bands, so.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank
Madam
you.
Chair.
Councilwoman Suarez.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Miller, you attended the training in
Yes.
March, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I know the letter said May, and I'm kind of really looking at dates very closely.
sure.
It wasn't your letter, but it was a
Okay.
different, just the application and letter, so I just thought, wanted to make sure it was March.
Sure,
And just
yes.
verify that,
Yeah.
so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, thank you, Councilwoman. Other questions, comments? We're good. All right. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
You bet. Anyone else present to testify on this item? We're on item 4E. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, let's please move on.
I'll be calling item 4F, application of SMG Food and Beverage LLC doing business as Pinnacle Bank Arena for a special designated licenses to cover an outdoor area measuring approximately 700 feet by 448 feet at Pinewood Bowl at 3201 South Cottington Avenue on May 12th and 18th from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m., July 25th from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m., and August 4th, 5th, 11th, 14th, 18th, 20th, 21st, and 27th from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. Do you solemnly swear and affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you really believe it to be, sir?
I do.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. You state your name and
My name
address
is
for the
Glenn
record.
Bateman. I'm Food and Beverage Director at Pinnacle Bank Arena, also covering Pinewood Bowl. Address is 400 Pinnacle Arena Drive.
Great. So you have a lot of dates here. And what's happening?
Well, we have 11
Selectman.
shows at Pinewood Bowl this summer. Really heavy in July and August. We have a couple. The first one is Chicago, May 12th. I can go through all of them if you like. Tracy Lawrence is going to be May 18th. Didishi Truck Band, July 25th. Then we have a whole bunch in August. We have Train on August 4th. Don't tell anybody, but Steve Miller Band is coming August 5th. Hasn't been announced. August 11th, Trombone Shorty, Mavis Staples. August 14th, Blues Travelers and Big Head Todd. August 18th, The Head and the Heart and Father John Misty. August 20th, the Doobie Brothers. August 21st, Lindsey Sterling, and finishing season with the Black Keys on August 27th.
It's quite the lineup. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Great. Great.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks for being here. Any questions or comments from the council?
I believe I understand what I'll be doing this summer.
Yeah. Yeah. Get ready. Very good.
Most of the tickets are on sale.
Good to know. All right. Thanks again. I don't think
Rest
we
of
have
the
any other
next one.
questions or comments. So unless you would like to say anything else, I think we're good.
I think I have another one for G.
Okay. Let's talk about it.
Item 4G is application of SMG Food and Beverage LLC doing business as Pinnacle Bank Arena for a special designated license to cover an outdoor area measuring approximately 210 feet by 200 feet at 400 Pinnacle Arena Drive on May 13th, 2023 from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m.
So this is a outdoor activation for the Kenny Chesney concert, which we did also in 2019. It'll be the same footprint. We ended up having to cancel that one last minute because of weather, but was set up. So it'll be 6-foot fencing around the area where alcohol is sold. It is open to the public and ticket holders. We're gonna have a couple bars there, just light snacks, and there'll be a Kenny Chesney bus parked in front on our street, just to draw a crowd.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
Great. Any questions on 4G from the council at all? All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Anyone else present to testify on items 4F or 4G? Anyone else? Seeing none, let's move on.
Item 4H, application of Bar at the Yard LLC doing business as Longwells for a special designated license to cover an outdoor area measuring approximately 130 feet by 66 feet at R Street between 7th and Canopy Street on May 12th, 2023 from 6 p.m. to 12 a.m. and May 13th, 2023 from 4 p.m. to 12 a.m.
Welcome back.
I'm going to swear you in there. Do you solemnly swear and affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you really believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Eric Marsh with Longwells. We are doing an activation actually on the Friday night before Kenny Chesney with that same bus, and then it'll put down the road to Pinnacle Bank Arena's event for Saturday. And then we are asking to have another similar event on the street on Saturday. We will actually, even though we're throwing our activation on Friday, we're expecting more people on Saturday. Everyone's going to the concert at that point, so we will be doing it that way.
Okay, questions or comments for Mr. Marsh? from the council?
First, thank you, Mr. Marsh, for explaining why Friday and Saturday, because I was
Yes.
thinking, I thought the concert was on Saturday, and it is, but
Yes.
thank you for explaining that you're going to just do 2 nights. Do you have anything else you want to tell us about your application?
Yeah, and I apologize for this. We are going to alter our timeline to mirror the same timeline on May 13th. So it's going to change from 4 to, instead of being from 6 to 12, it's going to be from 1 to 9 on the 13th. Instead of being from 4 to 12, it'll be from 1 to 9. Hopefully I can read this correctly.
1 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Yes.
on May 13th. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Other questions or none? All right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Marsh. Anyone else present to testify on item 4H? Anyone else?
Madam
Seeing
Chair?
none? Yes.
Hi, sorry to
Hi.
interrupt. Seeing no one else coming forward, I'd like to move approval of items 4A through 4H, please.
Second.
Seconded by Washington. Any further discussion?
Do we have a
Councilman
couple
Beckius? Yes.
motion to amends here? I would like to, well, can we back up?
You need H left so you can amend it? Is that what you need? Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve items 4A through 4G.
I'll second the friendly amendment.
All right.
So we'll come back to H by itself, then you can.
Madam Clerk, do we have motions to amend on G and H?
Correct. For clarification, I have a motion to amend for both item 4G and 4H to help solidify the times frames for both.
We don't have those amendments. I don't.
I forwarded them on the email.
They were emailed,
Would we have printed copies anywhere?
Sorry.
and I think that those amendments are simply to line up the dates that or the times that we just talked about. Mr. Christie, would you like to?
Yes, that's a good.
Looks like motion to amend Mr. Christie number 1 on Bill 23R-165. Looks like that's to include some additional requirements to the approval and to adjust the time of the event. And then it looks like motion to amend number 2 on 23R-164 was to include some additional requirements to the SDL, which it sounds like the city and applicants had already spoken of previously. Is that correct?
So correct. I believe so. The first, both of them that are, both motions to amend the additional requirements, both of them add that the applicant must obtain a special event permit. That is a requirement that exists pursuant to ordinance when someone is asking for a special event. We typically try to include those in the SDL applications as well. I think it's fair to say that certainly most of the bar owners that have gone through this before are aware that there's also a special event permit that's required through the city. Then the other language that adjusts the time of the event in Bill number 23R-165 is to change the time frame from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. on May 13th.
And it sounds like SMG and Longwells are aware of these changes, and I know when Mr. Marsh had come up, we'd reference them, so. Okay, very good.
Councilman Shob.
Mr. Christie, what should I do with my motion? Should I withdraw my motion and start
You
again?
should withdraw your motion. I believe that you had a motion. There was a second. There had not been any discussion. I believe that you can withdraw your motion. It sounds like there is unanimous consent to withdraw your motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to withdraw my motion.
Is there unanimous consent to do so?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Any objections? Okay, thank you.
And then should we take G and H separately since they have motions to amend on those?
Yes.
Let's do those first. Madam Chair, I move we approve item 4G.
Is there a second?
Second?
All right, seconded by Beckius. Further discussion on 4G.
Then the motion to amend, right?
Yes, Councilman Beckius.
Yes, ma'am. I would like to introduce a motion to amend number 1 on 23R-164 in order to include additional requirements to the SDL as outlined on our motion to amend.
Second.
Seconded by Washington. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the vote.
Okay. Suarez,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
excuse me, Washington,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Now let's do the H. Madam Chair, I make a motion we approve item 4H.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Suarez. Any further discussion? Councilman Beckius.
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to make a motion to amend on this item 23R-165 to include additional requirements to the approval and to adjust the time of the event as outlined in our motion to amend.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by McGinnis. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the vote.
Beckius,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Suarez,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, very good.
Now, the whole kit and caboodle, we voted, yeah. Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve items 4A through 4H.
Second.
Seconded by Washington. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the vote.
Washington,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Suarez,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's move on.
That concludes section 4 of our agenda. We shall move on to section 5, public hearing resolutions. Item 5A is Comprehensive Plan Amendment 23001, application of the Planning Director to amend the Lincoln Lancaster County 2050 Comprehensive Plan to add the major streets and right-of-way map.
Good evening, council members. David Carey, Director of the Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street. Here before you tonight to give you a little bit of background on why we are amending the major streets map into the 2050 plan. I will start out by saying that there was an oversight when we adopted the new 2050 plan, that this map actually is needed and required because it is referenced directly in the subdivision ordinance, and that's referenced in your staff report. So this is very much needed so that it brings clarity to how much right-of-way is expected to get for streets, especially in the areas that are developing and with new streets and new projects that happen as a growing community. I will note that this item will also be before the county board next Tuesday for their consideration because we have the county and the city adopt a plan when changes are made along the way. And that some of these roads do go into the county jurisdiction because we try to cover the growth areas of the future city. I will also note that we basically have brought the map as it was existing in the 2040 plan forward, but we did update it with projects that have been completed or if there were known changes. A good example is that in the 2050 plan, the Antelope Valley projects were still being shown. Obviously, those projects have been completed now, so those are not showing up on the map now. So we're showing only those pertinent right-of-ways moving forward. So with that, I can answer any other questions you might have, but I would ask for your approval of this. The Planning Commission did approve this 8-0 at their meeting.
Thank you, Director Carey. Are there questions? Councilman McGinnis.
I had a quick question. Looking at the map, Van Dorn Street, you're showing 100-foot right-of-way. Is that additional right-of-way or from 60 whatever?
Yeah, not necessarily. That's roughly from Normal Boulevard out to 84th Street.
Yeah.
So that is the section that is kind of like that 2+1 design today. So it's not necessarily additional right-of-way. What it really means is that we're saying that we would not need more than 100 feet of right-of-way for the foreseeable future. My understanding, without having actually gone out there and checked the right-of-way for Van Dorn in that section, is that we probably already have that right-of-way, but I can't guarantee that standing here.
Okay.
So it's more so simply just reflecting either the built environment or the intended built environment.
Correct.
That's all. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
So, yeah, so it's not, so someone, okay. Let's take, for example, along Van Dorn, someone has something built in that 100-foot already. I guess is that, I know the area quite well because that's where I live.
Mhm.
And I don't believe we have a 100-foot right-of-way
Yeah.
between
So-
Normal and Van Dorn.
Correct. So really what this would be used for is that if there was, in that area that you're referencing, if there was a redevelopment project, which isn't necessarily happening right now or not going to happen anytime soon, but it could happen. If we don't have that typically 50 foot on one side of the center line going back into what could be a development, at that time, we would make sure we have that right of way with that redevelopment. That's how this map would be used.
Okay.
Other questions for Director Carey? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else present to testify on this item? Item 5A. Item 5A. All right. Seeing none, let's move on.
We can now vote on this item. Item 5A is Comprehensive Plan Amendment 23001, application of the Planning Director to amend the Lincoln-Lancaster County 2050 Comprehensive Plan to add the major streets and rights-of-way map, introduced by Suarez.
So move.
Second.
Seconded by Beckius. Further discussion. Councilman McGinnis.
Well, just some of this, I guess, are we putting people on notice that we're going to take some right-of-way from them along their street at some point? Or, I guess it's a question, it's really for a redevelopment project at some point? Is that what it is? That they would be on notice that if they came in and wanted to redevelop their project, they would have to give that right-of-way back to the city, the additional right-of-way if it's not already there? Or is this plan, you can come back and say, okay, we want your yard because it says in the comp plan, we have a 100-foot right-of-way along here. I'm just trying to figure out how this will be in real time, and I'd like to hear from Councilman Beckius on this.
Councilman Beckius.
And perhaps Director Carey would like to come up and reiterate, but my understanding is that this serves as a guide in the 2050 comp plan for that in terms of best practices, what the city would like to see in terms of a right-of-way. Now, obviously, our built environment does not do that now. I mean, I think that the portions of Van Dorn that we're referencing right now are anywhere from 80 to 90 feet in terms of width. Certainly not at 100, but like in other sections of the city, this would serve as a guide so that when redevelopment does occur, as projects redevelop, that the city would be asking for additional right-of-way in order to get to that 100-foot in this particular circumstance, or the 100-foot on Rokeby, for example, as we look to the east of 40th Street and 120 in other places and what have you. Director Carey, is that a fair assessment of what we're doing?
Yes, yes, that's accurate. I would also, I guess the main point I would make in addition to what we've been talking about is this very much is mostly used for new developing areas where we don't have the major roads and streets built yet. And that's really where the right-of-way is obtained during that process of new development on the edges mostly. So yes, there are some areas in the internal area parts of the city where we, in a lot of cases, that's where we expect to have some more projects done.
And specifically, if I'm a homeowner and I take access onto Van Dorn, for example, or I'm abutting Van Dorn, nothing changes. If my use continues for a period of time, it's not as if the city of Lincoln's coming along saying, I'm trying to get more right-of-way as we go through the years. It's only if we're looking at a redevelopment situation.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Quick question.
Councilman, yes, please go ahead.
We're requiring now use permits, even if we're not redeveloping anything. I know there are some use permits. So someone wanted to put a car lot on an old restaurant, and they had to go through the planning commission to get a new use permit, but they weren't doing anything. They had to file a building permit, right? To change the use permit. At that point, would they be in non-conformance of the, if we change this and they didn't want to give the right of way? Let's say along here, there's a few small doctor's offices that wanted to change it to daycare. That'd be a use permit change. That'd be a permit change that would have to go supposedly in front of the planning commission. Would they at that time then, if they don't want to give up the extra right of way, would they be in default or in not conformance of the comp plan?
In those types of situations, if there wasn't the right-of-way already in place, which is, in that type of a situation, it very typically is. So we're not usually asking for more right-of-way at that point. Maybe a more typical situation might be where there might be a turn lane needed because of a additional activity, and there isn't the right-of-way available for that. We would request that right-of-way to be part of that approval. So we do have those discussions. But in a general sense, I think, I know Councilman Becky has said this earlier, this is meant to be the starting point of the discussion. It's a guide, and then it does become site-specific if enough traffic is generated that perhaps isn't there today. And we would be talking, obviously, with LTU as well, with what improvements would be needed with a project. And if there wasn't enough right-of-way already present, there would be a discussion about obtaining that right-of-way with the project.
Okay.
Councilwoman Washington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Carey, you had said that this map was inadvertently left out of the 2050 plan, and I'm curious, is this the same map that was in the 2040 plan? And if not, where are the differences between 2040 and 2050 and this major roads arterial map?
It is the same map that has been updated based on completed projects in areas that no longer need the designation of whatever the right-of-way designation was because the right-of-way's been obtained. So we went through a process with LTU to go through and make sure, since we're going through this process, we want to be making sure it was as updated as possible at this moment in time. So that would be the changes made. And like I said earlier, the Antelope Valley projects had been shown. Those projects are done, so they no longer show up on this new map. So that's one example of what the change was, the completed project version of that. So yeah, so it's the same map almost entirely with some exceptions with updates.
So in the area that Councilman McGinnis points out on Van Doren, is that similar to the 2040 map, or is that a new color highlight or indication of 100 foot?
That is it basically retains the same designation, is my understanding.
Same designation from the last comp plan in 2040?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much.
Any further questions for Director Carey or comments? All right, thank you, Director. All right, any further comments or further discussion by the council? We're ready to take a vote. All right.
I need a second.
I'm sorry?
I read the item in, and I believe was my second. Becky is?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we are ready to call the vote, please, Madam Clerk.
Suarez?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Bowers?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Beckius?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay.
That concludes section 5 of our agenda. We'll move on to section 6, public hearing ordinances, second reading and related resolutions. Item 6A is approving a real estate sales agreement between the City of Lincoln and Stephen L. and Gail E. Carper for the sale of city-owned property generally located at 139 North 18th Street, Lincoln, Nebraska.
Good evening, council members. Hallie Salem Urban Development, 555 South 10th Street, Suite 205. The item before you is a real estate sales agreement between the city and the Carpers, the owners of O Street Carpet on O Street. And the parcel on North 18th owned by the city, this is the parcel, is surrounded by parcels owned by the Carpers on all 3 sides, and then the right-of-way. The Carpers own O Street Carpet here on O Street, and this is O Street and North 18th. The parcel has been leased by the Carpers for many years and maintained as a surface parking lot. And the city has reached an agreement with the Carpers to sell the property for $15 a square foot and for a total of $26,625. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Salem? Comments, all right. Saying none? Thanks so much. Anyone else present to testify on this item? Item 6A? Anyone else? All right. Saying none, let's move on.
Okay, I'll be calling item 6B through 6E together. Item 6B is Comprehensive Plan Amendment 23002, application of Hoppy Development to amend the Lincoln-Lancaster County 2050 Comprehensive Plan to revise the future land use map from urban residential to commercial and urban residential on approximately 2 acres for the property generally located at 1620 South 84th Street, and the related annexation 23001, application of Hoppy Development to annex approximately 4.70 acres, more or less, of the property generally located at 1620 South 84th Street, and the related change of zone 23013, application of Hoppy Development for a change of zone from AG Agriculture District to R1 Residential District, PUD, plan unit development to allow for up to 8,200 square feet of office use and a hotel with up to 5 rooms with associated waivers on the property generally located at 1620 South 84th Street. And item 6C is appeal of request of deviation from access management policy requirements for 1620 South 84th Street.
Okay, welcome, gentlemen.
Good afternoon. My name's Rick Onan with ENA Consulting, 701 O Street, here with the developer Fred Hoppy, and we are here to discuss a proposed plat for a piece of property off of 84th Street. The property is generally located, this area down here is the parking lot for Messiah Lutheran Church and School. So if it gives you an idea, we're just about a block north of that. The real crux of this application is an opportunity or a desire to repurpose an existing residential structure. There's a large house, so shown here kind of in a tan color is the existing house. The client is proposing an addition, an office addition, which should be shown here in yellow, and then some parking improvements to that structure. So the plan, or the area right now is outside of the city limits, so obviously we're combining a lot of things into the application: comp plan amendment, change of zone, annexation, and also the plat. So it's important to note that this property is, most of this is not sewerable. The applicant had started a process of subdividing this by deed and then was informed that because of the size of the property that was not appropriate, and so now we're in front of you with a PUD as the correct mechanism to do that. At this point then, because most of that area is not sewerable, we would only be platting one buildable lot, which would house that existing structure and the addition and its related parking. One of the issues that has kind of been a point of contention as we dealt with city staff was access to this parcel. Because it fronts to 84th Street, we were asking to take access off of 84th Street. Again, the area to the east, the property to the east that's part of this parcel, there's no street there right now. But the only other way to access it would be to extend Stonehill Road down and come in from the backside, from the east side, which would essentially require taking the commercial traffic through a residential neighborhood. So, directly off of 80, located here, start actually of the 85. On the conditions from reference to lot 1, I think.
I don't think.
I'll let Fred give you a little.
I live at one of my developments, and I know most of you. And the backstory on this property is, and why, well, there's a couple reasons why we want to redevelop it into a headquarters office. But the main reason is to keep it pretty much and develop it suitable to the neighborhood, because I'm a neighbor. It is in my backyard. When I sit on my back deck, I look over this property, half of it. Anyway, so that's that. I'm a principal of Hoppy Development. Hoppy Development, we have like 3 phases. Basically, we design and develop real estate, affordable and workforce housing mostly. We have a construction company, and we have a management company. We don't have a lot of employees. We got 30 and we're growing, but only about a dozen of them work in the office on a regular basis. Several come in a couple days a week. Some of the management people, they'll come in one day, and they'll bring them all in. But we don't have a big use of the property as far as people coming and going. We're asking to build on this property an 8,200 square foot office building. It'll probably be 75 in 3 floors, but anyway, 8,200 square foot office building. And a up to 5 unit or 5 residence hotel. Now, it sounds kind of crazy. And we promised and we said at Planning Commission, we're not going to have a no vacancy sign up on the street, 84th Street, to advertise or indicate that we're ready to rent out our hotel. The purpose for the hotel change and the allowed use of the hotel is so we can use that building for our collection space and community space in conjunction with the office building. What that designation does is it allows us to use the space without remodeling it substantially and structurally to allow those uses in the house. What we're trying to do and what we want to do is create a headquarters office for Hoppy Development. We've had a family business. Our history of the business goes back to the early 1900s. And we've always officed in Lincoln. The majority of that time's been as an adjunct to selling lumber, has been developing real estate. We are confident, as are our neighbors, that we'll develop this space, and particularly the commercial portion, tastefully as a neighbor would like it, because we're a neighbor. Anyway, so that's what we want to do, and the 4 requests enable us to do it. Basically, we want to leave the west facade of the building the way it is. And the approach to the building using the entrance that we already have. We don't want to have to build a new entrance. You've heard how expensive it is. And quite frankly, for the amount of use we're going to give it, it's not necessary. And so it's just an expense and, in my mind, a waste. Anyway, but we've analyzed the street, and as to the waiver, we've got, and I think this is in the stuff we handed out to you, There are 14 other commercial users without turn lanes up and down that street, including the city's Mopac Trailhead is there that doesn't have a turn lane, and Messiah Lutheran is right next to us without a turn lane. Messiah Lutheran has not only, it's got a school in addition to the church. So 7 days a week, they're using that property, and it has no turn lane. It has no turn lane in conjunction. They just went through a remodel at about double the size of it. They didn't put in a turn lane as a result or in conjunction with that, which, in any case. So we want to leave the west facade the way it is. The presentation and in the materials we gave you, you can see how you drive in and look at that building. And it's a neo-Georgian design, and the house looks really good. It's going to make a great headquarters office. So that's what we're trying to do. When looking at our change of zone request and looking at the change of the comp plan, I think you really need to take into consideration what the uses off of 84th Street are, not just the uses in the immediate area of our requested change of zone. From Old Cheney to Holdridge, there are 92 commercial uses and office uses abutting 84th Street. Our requested use for a headquarters office off 84th Street is not an oddity on the street. It's pretty common. You can't go a block, and we've got an analysis in the handout we gave you. We've got an analysis of how many commercial uses there are per mile in off of 84th Street. So our intended use is not an oddity. The use, all of our different plans except the waiver of the access management plan was approved by the Planning Commission, change of zone 6-2. Anyway, probably the biggest thing about this project came about because that property was sitting open for a long period of time. And when finally it was getting way too long, I called up Nate Stivers, Ed Stivers owned the property. And I called up Nate and said, look, I'll give you whatever that place is worth. I'm tired of you having it for sale. And none of the neighbors knew what could possibly happen to it. So one of my neighbors wanted me to get it for a different reason. We passed on that, but this would allow us to hold that property and keep the rest of it in waiting for when the sewer will come up from the east and water will be accessible, and then we'll develop the rest of the 2 acres. What we want to do now is get entitlements so we can build a headquarters office for Hoppy Development. I'd answer any questions you have. Oh, what do we do with the rest of the property? We plan on leaving it pretty much the way it is. We'll hay there's a big field there on the north half of the property. Middle of the property, there's a drainage swale and a culvert. And so it doesn't, I think we asked for a waiver of putting in a drainage plan at this time until we redevelop the remaining 5 acres. And why? Because it's set up for drainage right now. It's, anyway. Knowing Mr. McGinnis has a lot of questions, I'll leave it at that. But There may be a comment in the staff report about a illegal subdivision. When we took title to this property, the property was listed on the city's books as 2 legal descriptions. So we took title in each of those, used each of those legal descriptions when we acquired the property. Well, we didn't subdivide it. The city had it on his books that way. So that's that. But this cures it. We're asking for a change of zone. That'll create, what we'll be creating is one big outlot that in the future we've looked at how it would lay out for residential, and that's in the materials we've given you. And then our dedicated headquarter office. So I'd answer any questions. And I think, do you have that on the board?
Yeah. Do you want me to talk about design quick?
Yeah.
So I'm Ben Kuntz. I'm with Fred at Hoppy Development. Just to speak to the design quickly, as mentioned, we intend to keep the existing drive as it approaches the property now. And it would lead into a parking area appropriate for the development. And zooming in, you can see the existing residence would be maintained, as mentioned, designated hotel. The existing garage area would be converted to office use in conjunction with an addition for the primary office. We've selected and have presented to the neighbors and are now presenting to you a selection of images that describe at a high level our intent for the architectural design, one that is consistent with residential forms, but allows for kind of an office level of transparency, and but in our mind, really in keeping with the residential neighborhood. And this would be the view of the existing house, and you can see highlighted in yellow what may be visible from the primary street frontage of what the office addition may appear. So you can see the scale of the addition is really quite minimal in terms of its impact on the existing facade. And we put this forward as what we think is a great fit for the neighborhood.
We did, and we got support from substantially all the neighbors. I think there are 3 letters involved. One is from Searcy's, 2 are from, one is from Harris's, and Harris's look across the open field to the house. The Eubanks live further down the street in Echo Road or something. And I was surprised, but we have substantially all the neighbors support us. And don't know all the reasons, but I'm assuming, confident that knowing I'm going to do it, it's going to be done right. So, and fit into the neighborhood. So anyway, that's it. Answer any questions you'd have.
Thank you all very much. Questions from the council? Councilman Beckius?
Yes, thank you. Hi.
Hi.
So, thinking about this project, Fred, I'm thinking beyond the uses that we're talking about here today. So, talk to me a little bit more about Outlaw A, because what I'm seeing right now is a potential design conceptual residential layout that looks like 3 larger residential lots.
Right.
But then I have a big chunk of Outlaw A existing to the north of the property.
Yeah. Well, the big chunk of Outlot A, Outlot A, first of all, is the remainder of the 7 acres. 7 acres was originally created in 1977, 78, right before the zoning code came in.
Sure.
Okay? And it was the property, my dad owned the rest of the 40 acres around Echo Hills subdivision. He carved it into 3 acreages. I took the middle one, which was the biggest at 9 acres. Ed Stivers bought this 7-acre piece. Stony Hill comes into the north part of that. When we designed Outlot, or the conceptual of Outlot A here, there was, we took Stony Hill, and you'd have to essentially take it into the church's property. And the church, if you know the area, the church on the east end of this property and on my property that's on the east side of it is south of us, and they have a cornfield right now. At some point, they'll probably want to get it developed, and we'll take Stony Hill Road. The logical way to do that is to create Stony Hill Road and take it behind that Norville Road properties, those properties where they dead end, and into the church property. To do that, that essentially creates or leaves that big lot when you carve the other lots on 2 sides of Stony Hill. And the big lot that ends up there is a pipeline issue. And the pipeline goes down 84th Street. So that, and I think on this, can you see this map? Yeah, you can.
Yep.
The pipeline is got a protected zone
Sure.
that really interferes with interferes with taking a cul-de-sac down into that area you're talking about. So ultimately, we'll probably create a big lot for a triplex or something like that, and you have to leave idle that whole western portion of it because of the pipeline easement.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does make sense, Fred. You know, part of my job is to think ahead, and my question is that, you know, is that the highest and best use of the land if I was in your position? You know, if I was in your position, could I get another office user in there? I don't know that that's necessarily out of line. You know, if that's the case, then it reverts back to the driveway question. This motion to amend kind of gives me a little bit of a pause too, if we're talking about a potential future use, accessing that Outlot A. And so that was the crux of my question, because we don't really show Outlot A other than those 3 residential lots as a future use. And if it after your use, a user were to come along and say, well, golly, I maybe I can put a dentist's office there or a chiropractor's office there, then we've tied our way out of that turn lane possibility, and that gives me pause, because I think the access management policy, as you stated quite clearly, has, you know, you talk about Messiah Lutheran, not a great setup. I think users of 84th Street would agree. I mean, I go down there, and I think on Sundays there's a police officer out there to help traffic. You know, those are not great setups, and you know, obviously, the city of the residents of the city have stated travel times are important, and you know, I don't have a particular heartburn about the use that you're talking about right now. But I do potentially have a concern going forward if that highest and best use of that outlot is another commercial type use. And how do we preserve that right going forward is a question that I do have. And then the other question that I had for you, and I'll mention it now because you mentioned it at Planning Commission and you mentioned it again today. So I understand from your testimony at Planning Commission that that the reasoning behind the hotel designation was for basically in order to not make improvements on the existing home right now, in order to facilitate a traditional office use. And so I guess my question becomes is that, do you plan on having units for rent, residential units for rent, short-term or otherwise there in actuality?
No, is a simple answer to that.
Okay.
What we want to do is, we're trying to avoid having to go in and do structural changes to the building.
Right.
To change the loading requirements if it was to be used for like meeting rooms and so forth in conjunction with the office. We do not plan, and as I said earlier, we're not going to have a Hoppy Motel sign up on the 84th Street. We will probably keep a few of those rooms in terms of rooms so that some of our staff that come in from out of town and were to spend the night could stay there.
Sure.
But we're not, it is not intended to be a hotel in the sense of what I think your question is.
Sure.
Do we plan to rent rooms? No, we don't.
Okay.
Will we rent rooms? I'm pretty doggone sure we will not.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I would answer one other question, though, or the earlier question, because I think you wondered about that piece of ground that's in the
Outlot A.
In Outlot A.
Sure.
That is in the I guess you'd call it the pipe stem or the
Pipeline
portion, the
Sure.
pipeline planning.
And then
yeah.
further east, what, golly, 500 feet or so, maybe a little bit more?
I'm not sure, but we'd have to come back to change the zone.
Yeah,
So,
that's what I was
mean,
going to point out. In order to do that, the way we've got it set up, the only piece that we're changing zone on now would be Lot 1. So in order to use that for
No,
commercial use, we would be back in front of this board, back in front of Planning Commission, back in front of this board to get that
Right.
approved. And if the traffic counts at that point,
Rick, what happens with the driveway at that point in time?
you may have to move. If it if there's enough use there to justify the cost of a turn lane at that time, maybe it's appropriate. At this point, we say it's not.
No,
Well,
I follow.
But,
Yeah.
but it would have to be done in conjunction with the change of zone. So, I mean, if the question is, what do we do about the access at that point in time, it's going to have to, whoever's going to do that.
Relinquishing access, though?
All
No,
we're
that's
asking
for
on
outlot
there
one
is to
or lot
allow us to
one.
have a drive to 84th Street.
Huh?
This is relinquishing vehicular access to Outlot A. So if later down the road, we need to put in another drive aisle and because of a turn lane,
We would have to amend that, yes.
Wait, now, let's get straight what we're doing. Because I don't think we object to relinquishing access for Outlot A to 84th Street. What we want to make sure is Lot 1 gets access to 84th Street.
yep, I follow.
Okay.
Yep.
Because
Okay.
we intend to, when Outlot A is developed, Stony Hill will go through of some sort.
Sure. And, okay.
I mean, does that?
Well,
I guess I'm trying to focus the question. What raised the issue was later in one of the amendments or one of the conditions. It says relinquishing access, that for us to get a building permit, we have to relinquish access to 84th Street.
Yep, nope, I understand.
Yeah.
If it's more palatable that we just strike that condition altogether, that would give them either access to A or Lot 1, we would certainly support that. At this point, we just don't see the need for that.
Yeah, we don't. We'd be happy to relinquish. I mean, we're not happy to, but we understand, we don't plan
Yeah.
on using Outlot A and access from 84th Street and think that's a fair requirement. But Lot 1, different story.
Yep, understood. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Other questions, comments?
I have a lot of questions for staff.
Okay. Any other questions for our applicants while they're up here? Councilwoman Suarez.
Yeah, now, I know that Councilmember Beckius is much more informed and grounded on this than I, but you talked about future use, and if the driveway would have to be changed, where would it be changed to? How would access be granted to Outlot A? I didn't understand that, if it needed to be changed.
So we would have to go back through the planning process and amend the preliminary plat or the PUD. And at that point, we could move the access point.
And my question is, where would it be moved to?
Oh, I think we looked at the design of where you'd have to, if you were gonna follow or put in a other designed access. And it would essentially take it to the north side of the property. And you have to go down in there. And if you know the contours of the property, one of the big problems is that 84th Street's the crest of a ridge. And right where that property, right where this design is, yeah, here, that's where the contour drops off the steepest and the fastest. So you have to fill that whole area. You have to bring it back by. That's why, Tom, it's not one of the best uses for the driveway and taking commercial in off a driveway there.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it just doesn't work out.
Again, the existing drive is here. So this was kind of the minimal turn lane length that we could get by with that would push it up here. If this area over here was to develop, we could even push that even further up and create a little bit longer turn lane if needed. Again, we're kind of looking at this particular use right now. So this was kind of the minimal improvement that could be done at this point to serve that property, which still pushed it quite a ways north.
My last question, I know there's a circular driveway. I went out to the property today just to take a look at it. And you would just then make that, that would cease to be, you would have a parking lot, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So you would take out the circular driveway and then one end would just be the
Yeah.
parking lot? Okay. Yeah, just wanted to double check. So, thank you. That's
Thank
all I
you.
have.
Thank you for going by it.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Washington.
Thank you. I do have a question. If you would put the drawing back up again with the minimal access road or turn lane. I'm trying to read, and I couldn't quite make out. Could you please read for me? There's a couple of lines coming off of 84th and off of the drive that's sketched in. What do those things say? One says something parking? Possible parking?
Private?
So this would be a private drive to the parking lot. So
Thank
we say private parking, it's
Thank you.
actually kind of an access drive.
All right, and then there's two more lines above that one, a little bit closer to 84th Street. What do they say?
So this one there's an 8-foot bike path along there, so it'd be an 8-foot sidewalk relocated. There's also a street light there that would have to be relocated to accommodate this.
Thank you. I'm just.
That answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
We don't have that one in our packet, so.
No.
Thank you. Any other questions for our applicants? All right, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Three very much. And Director Carey, would you come to the dais? We'll start with Director Carey and other staff as needed. Thank you.
Good evening, David Carey, Director of the Planning Department.
It's yours, Councilwoman. It's yours.
Director Carey. I have a couple of questions, and actually, as Director Elliott comes forward, I realize that she may have to jump in at some point, because I have questions about the sheet of paper that the applicant handed out that said turn lane narrative. And I do have a question about Outlot A and some potential future access drive. So let's start with some basics, because I know that the city has that access plan, and it was adopted in the 2010-ish time period. And the applicant has alluded to the fact that there are multiple other commercial access points along 84th Street. And I am curious, what's the age of some of those access points, and were they grandfathered in? And I think as we talked recently about the right-of-way on Van Doren, not being an absolute, but as things progress and as, you know, as we evolve or whatever, we would strive for that size right-of-way. And so I guess I'm curious, when it says that there are 14 private commercial driveways with access onto 84th right now without a turn lane, what's the context of that?
Sure. I'll start with a context answer. Director Elliott's here from LTU, and she has a staff person here as well. They're the experts on that topic, so we have coordinated for this evening that they should be, primary answering those questions. But I think the beginning of the context is that many of those driveways are older than the access management policy. So we have that policy now, and we do intend to follow that policy as much as possible, while there being a process to request relief from that, and then that's the process that we're in right now.
Okay, that's helpful. And does the same go for the private residential drives? Because I know there are a couple dozen, I guess, left of private residential drives onto 84th.
Yeah, I can't speak specifically to all of them, not knowing all the history of every single one, but yes, generally speaking, they're older, pre-existing driveways.
All right, that's those things are helpful to note. So we have here a lot of different items before us, and we don't often see a recommendation from staff for denial. And so I just want to make certain that I understand the reasoning behind it and what we're looking at. So the comp plan, the first item, I'm just going to start with 6B.
Sure.
The comp plan amendment is just asking us to revise the future use from residential to commercial. And this is something that would ride on this property regardless of owner for a long time.
Yes, and to be clear, this is the future land use, so this isn't the zoning piece.
Right.
So this is the guide part.
Right, this is the guide part, but we've said we want this to be residential urban density, and this would be changing it to commercial.
Correct. And so part of the answer to your question of how we got to denial on this particular part of the proposal, the map that's up there now on the overhead, it indicates that, the entire area currently in the plan for the future land use is showing it for urban residential. And so that cutout that we have identified with the highlight, we would be, with an approval, would be saying that that particular area could be used for commercial in the future. And obviously there's a corresponding change of zone that goes along to provide a PUD for that.
Mm-hmm. And so that commercial use is for the entirety of that parcel, not just for the front half or anything. This is...
Well, yeah, and just to be clear, that this is the area that would be housed by the applicant's proposal to, where the existing house is,
Mm-hmm.
as well as where the proposed new office building would be.
Right. And then annexation, I think I understand annexations. The change of zone, going from ag to R1 PUD. Can you tell me a little bit about the PUD and how the hotel and office use work? Does this being considered as a hotel, does that ride with the deed forever? Or is this only with the PUD? And so that could be changed. So let's just say that Mr. Hoppy is no longer the owner of this. Would the next owner be able to actually upgrade this to a hotel?
Yes. And what I put up on the overhead is, so the change of zone does cover the entirety of the property,
Okay.
but the PUD PUD being the version of the change of zone, the PUD is being specific to the area that is being proposed for the commercial. So that would be in place if this was approved, and that would ride with the land.
Would you be very clear about the picture that we're looking at? Which part is commercial?
So it would be, this is this area right here is the existing house, and then as proposed, the new office building would be coming off to the back of that, and then it'd be surrounded by parking. So it's this area that would be, within the PUD, would be designated for some level of commercial activity.
And that is, it has a shading on it.
Yes, except that is just indicating the existing city limits on the map.
Okay.
But it would be this area, and then there's
All right.
a kind of an angle there.
Thank you. I'll leave my next questions for Director Elliott, trying to understand the deviation. I'm trying to, wait a second, let me ask one more question. Would we need to come back for an amendment, or would the applicant for outlet A in order to build on it? Would that need to be?
Yes, and so it's part of the PUD, but it's being set aside as an outlet. So yes, it would have to come back in. Right now, the anticipated use for that outlet, as well as for the backside, right now is for future residential.
And is there space west of the pipeline area that could still be residential, or?
It could be, it certainly could be zoned residential. The way that we've been handling the pipeline planning areas is that we would want to design a future development so that we're not putting housing units and those other types of uses in that particular area. But the eastern part certainly could be used for a residential unit or units.
And then the western part between 84th and the pipeline area? Is
Likely, as if it was residential, we would want to keep that open and not an active use.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Director Carey? Other questions? All right. Yes, Councilman Shob?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Carey, thanks for coming forward. I'm still a little puzzled. We're looking at 3 items, and the planning department listed some reasons why, mostly access, that they thought this wasn't a good time to do these things. Wasn't a good time for the annexation, and could you elaborate on that? Usually when people come forward and they want to be annexed, we embrace that and steer into it. Yeah.
So the annexation piece, if you were to separate it from the proposed uses that are part of this application, the annexation is on its own appropriate. It can be served by, in the future anyways, by water and sewer. We would want an annexation note with that to say that it can't currently be served by water and sewer, but it's not, that is not the crux of the issue. So if there was another proposal that, for example, if it was all being proposed for residential and we had the access management piece of it figured out, that would be the easiest part of this. We would say, yes, we would be okay with the annexation.
I noticed in the staff notes, it said something, I'm not going to get it right. A lack of a PUD or an incomplete PUD?
I'm not quite certain what you're referencing specifically on that. I could try to look that up and get back to you on that.
Well, let's go through this. So, since it came before your department, then it went before the Planning Commission, has anything happened to change? Would you give the same recommendation today, knowing what you know now about the application?
I think at the staff level, we would still recommend denial because of the isolated nature of the commercial zoning and the use that is being proposed. I think that, and then in addition to that, the access management piece and that policy that we do try to follow that policy. So, but the reality is that we have an approval recommendation coming from the Planning Commission. So that's another piece of the information to consider as you decide what you want to do.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else have questions for Director Carey? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And there were questions for Director Elliott. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
Director Elliott, would you please just walk us through a little bit and talking about the turn lanes along 84th, or the lack of turn lanes for some intersections and some commercial and residential properties. First, can you tell me what's the policy around access management on public intersections? The applicant has alluded that there are 35 public intersections without turn lanes. And I did not drive down 84th and count them myself, so.
I can't say that I've counted them. There are a number of access points. I know he specifically mentioned the Trailhead and some other businesses. Those do exist, and those exist, most, if not all of them, prior to 2012, which is when I believe the access management was officially adopted, somewhere around there. But again, as I kind of went through and I was looking, double checking through the assessor site as I was sitting here to see, all of those were existing prior to that. And as we all know, we can't go back and fix the sins of our forefathers. All we can do is learn from those and improve from where we're at. And that is the goal of the access management policy and the decisions that we make. Everything that we look at is through the lens of public safety. And what we've all learned is that the more access points that you have, especially along a major arterial such as 84th Street, you have the 40-mile-an-hour traffic, which is probably higher than 40 when people are driving, along with distracted on their phones. The more times people are going to stop to turn into an access point, the more likely we have the opportunity for rear-end crashes. And so the more we can eliminate those access points as we go along and clean it up over the years when the opportunity presents itself, the safer our traveling public is going to be traveling down those roads. And so that's ultimately part of the reason why the access management policy was implemented, along with consistency, because it was kind of a shotgun approach. It depends on where you're at and what it is. We don't get many deviation requests, and most of them that we do get, we try and figure out a way to grant them. So I think it was you that mentioned you don't get many of these, and in fact, this might be the first one since I've been in my position the last 3 years. There might have been one or two others, I think. So we don't get them very often, and we realize turn lanes, there's a cost to them. It is something that we do factor in. We're not here to just make more regulations and costs for individuals. So we do look at that. We did also pull the traffic counts for that, the history and the projected, and we don't. In the city, we don't have the luxury of just looking at a vacuum today. We actually have to look forward and what is the potential use and the potential growth of this area. And as you saw from the photos that Mr. Hoppy showed, there's a tremendous amount of growth that could happen in this area. Right now, our 2022 traffic counts show that the volume of traffic on 84th Street exceeds 32,000 vehicles per day. The traffic models indicate almost about 31,000 turns per day along that route. In 2035, less than 15 years from now, the model shows that there's going to be an additional 10,000 vehicles per day on 84th Street. So taking the opportunities when they present themselves to be able to clean up and minimize those potential crash points is imperative to a safe and healthy community, along with those of us who travel that to get across town smoothly and quickly. Slowing down for someone turning into a driveway is frustrating, especially when you have so many. The other part of this is that right now, since 2020, just from A Street to about Jansen, which is about where this development is, there have been 12 crashes since 2020. And that's only on the northbound. That's not looking at the southbound, and that's not looking at the further length of that stretch. It's just in that area. We're seeing about a dozen crashes in the last 3 years. You add additional volume on that, you add additional distracted drivers, that number, unfortunately, is probably going to go up. Those are the things that we look at. Those are some of the issues that we take into consideration on our engineering decisions, on our deviation reviews, and what we look at. So I probably rambled more than your question, and I apologize.
No, I did want to understand the context of it, and I appreciate that. I think those are my questions. They really were about public access and turn lanes and things like that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions for Director Elliott and Council? All right.
And then I will throw this out, I guess, in an effort to try and find a win-win solution here. In looking at it, and given what Mr. Hoppe has said, both here and at the Planning Commission, I think he has specifically said that it's specifically designed basically to keep it the way it is, with little other than the 8200 edition, that there's only going to be about a dozen, give or take, people working in this office. And I know, at least at the Planning Commission, and it was mentioned here, that the driveway would not be heavily used under the current purpose. Knowing, looking ahead, that can change. Mr. Hoppe could sell it, get rid of it, or change his mind in a few years. And the Planning Commission highlighted that part of their vote was based on the fact that it will not greatly impact the area, including they knew what the limited use for the business was, and that there was a minimal traffic impact for that specific use of it. Also, taking into consideration that the cost of that turn lane, one option could potentially be to keep access on 84th as is, but if and when there's further development on that lot or that adjacent lot, that you take access at that point from whatever road access way is created through that further development. I think that would be an option. We keep it as is. That's the way Mr. Hoppe has indicated it's going to be. It's a relatively small impact. There's a little bit of an increase, but not much. So that could be workable. But if and when that is further developed out, that access be taken somewhere else. And I think that would get us closer to a win-win option. But just throwing that out there as one potential direction we could go.
Well, Director Elliott, I for one appreciate your willingness to offer that up at some point, because I struggle as a policy maker, supporter, because I do support staff decisions, and I want to support those whenever I can, but I also try to think about why I was elected, and that is sometimes to think about perhaps the broader picture and the more creative way, or the middle ground, as you just suggested. And so I really appreciate your foresight into this, because Mr. Hoppe has worked with the city so long. I know that I believe him when he says, this is my intent. There's no reason not to. And so I like your idea of if and when. As I hear the vote on the Planning Commission to support it, regardless of the staff decision, that's difficult for the planning commissioners to do that. But their job too, as they were appointed, is to sometimes think outside the box and think about the costs involved for applicants. And so that's not always easy when you're on this side of the dais. So I, for one, would support looking at that idea that you just lofted for the council to think about. So thank you for making that an option, perhaps.
Definitely.
Appreciate it very much. Any other comments for Director Elliott at this point?
Just for
Yes.
clarification, would that take another motion to amend? We would.
I believe so. That would
be a second motion.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, they already are appealing it, so they're appealing the turn lane as part of one of the,
Yes,
I guess
I
maybe
think
we-
I was looking at the motion to
Oh,
amend. We
yes.
have it on
Oh, yeah,
our-
sure.
on our desk right
Okay.
now, and that we would need another motion to
Okay.
amend to pick
Right.
up
Yeah.
Director Elliott's suggestion.
right, okay, I'm with you.
Okay.
Now I understand, all right. Thank you, Director Elliott.
Thank you.
Anyone else present to testify on these items? This issue, anyone else here? All right. Any further questions from the council?
I
Yes.
thought of a couple of questions for the applicant. It could be any one of you. There are questions regarding the use of the driveway by existing staff. And I heard you say very clearly, this is low minimum, this is a minimum number of staff. You have 12 staff who work in the office on a regular basis or every day.
Yeah, the count I had today was 10, but,
Okay.
you know, I'm pretty sure we'll be increasing it by a few, and then some come in.
And do you allow them to go out to lunch and come? No, I'm joking. I'm sorry.
Right.
No, that wasn't my
Well, I
question.
can walk to
Yeah,
lunch.
my real question is, because you mentioned your 3 business lines, and I'm just curious, will trucks with trailers or construction trucks be coming into the driveway?
During the construction of the building, for
No,
sure.
after it's all built out?
We're
And
not
because
planning
you
on
talked
that.
about groups of staff
We're
coming
not
in
planning on that.
during the day.
There is an existing shop / something in the back that Nate Stivers used as a shop when he lived there, and Ed used it too, somebody else. Right now, we've got storage of some equipment in it right now. But it is not intended. The director did come to me this afternoon and said, made the offer. And I thought she was going to talk to me before this, and apparently she didn't. She just brought it up with you. But the reality is, our plan is to make a headquarters office for us of 8,200 square feet with the use of the house as our congregation spaces, you know, collection, conference rooms, that kind of stuff. You know, to change that use, we'd have to come back. And the use is site-specific.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the questions you asked earlier was, what would happen if you wanted to increase the use? We have to come back. We can't put 9,000 square feet of office on that property with the change of zone and the PUD that allows only 8,200. So all of that, we have to come back. To change the use in Outlot A, we have to come back. So all of those things, there's many cracks of denial that come forward, or opportunities, when we come back. But as to the specific question of if we're going to materially or substantially increase the use of Lot 1, we'll definitely take a look at and would probably consent to put in the deceleration lane. But when you're talking about the future and the use of 84th Street, remember 98th Street isn't paved. When it gets paved, it's going to take a bunch of that street traffic away. When we have an east bypass, we're going to be looking at, instead of 84th Street being the east bypass, we're going to have an east bypass. So the future swings both ways as far as use of 84th Street. And I think that's important to keep in mind, even though the suggestion is that no, it's going to be a problem. But so I guess to answer several things, this is an existing access. It's not a new one we're asking for. And we just want to use it the way it is. We want to redevelop the property in a reasonable use that fits compatibly into our neighborhood and is tastefully in my backyard. And consequently, that's the nature of the whole beast. We trying to figure out some way to use it so that we can warehouse the rest of it for past my death. And then, you know, I'm sure it's going to be developed residentially. Could the use be changed? I guess the zoning could be changed so that that portion that's in the pipeline area could be commercial. But to do it, somebody'd have to come back here. And quite honestly, it just really doesn't seem to me to lend itself that way when residential's coming up and it's going to be sewered and so forth. So we'd appreciate your support. And I'd answer any further questions.
Any more questions for Mr. Hoppy? Comments? All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else on this topic that would like to testify on these items? Anyone else present that would like to testify? All right. Seeing none, let's move on, Madam Clerk.
That concludes section 6 of our agenda. We shall move on to section 7. Okay. Item 7A is approving the Union at Antelope Valley redevelopment agreement between the city and Union at Antelope Valley for the redevelopment of the property generally located at 18th and K Streets, introduced by Shob.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded by Beckius. Further discussion? Seeing none, please call the vote.
Shob,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Suarez,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Item 7B is amending the fiscal year 22-23 CIP to authorize and appropriate $3,400,000 in tax increment financing for the Union at Antelope Valley redevelopment project, introduced by Shob.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded by Beckius. Further discussion? Seeing none, please call the vote.
Bowers,
Yes.
Shob,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Suarez,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Item 7C is authorizing the issuance of tax allocation bonds for the Union and Antelope Valley redevelopment project in the amount not to exceed $3,400,000, introduced by Shob.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded by Beckius. Further discussion? Seeing none, please call the vote.
Bowers,
Yes.
Suarez,
Yes.
Shob,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
6.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you, Councilwoman Washington. 6-0. Okay. That concludes our section 7, ordinances, third reading and related resolutions. Section 8 is resolutions, first readings, items 8A through 8C. Section 9 is ordinances, first readings, items 9A through 9D. And then section 10 is pending lists, items 10A through 10C. Excuse me, 10A through 10D.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll move into the public comment portion of our meeting. Is there anyone present to speak to the City Council on any item not on this agenda or not been on a scheduled for a future agenda? You're welcome to do so at this time. Anyone present that would like to speak with the City Council, please come forward.
They're shaking their heads.
And they're like, no way. All right.
Madam Chair, seeing no one, I move to adjourn.
Seconded by Washington. Madam Clerk, please call the vote to
Shob,
adjourn.
Yes.
Suarez,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
We are adjourned.